The assignment was recreate ancient armor. Human said, "Do you want mine polished or bloodstained?" The assignment sheet landed on Junio's desk at 9:14 in the morning. It was one page, white, clean, printed in the Concordat standard trilingual header that always put human standard at the bottom like an afterthought, and it said exactly what Module 7 of the Cultural Preservation course always said. Recreate a piece of military armor from your species pre-spaceflight era The exercise is designed to demonstrate your civilization's evolved relationship with its martial origins graded on historical accuracy, aesthetic execution, cultural insight Around Junio, the seminar hall filled with the sounds of 28 students from 12 different species, all reading the same sheet and already calculating their approaches. The Drevathai pair to his left, Sela and Roan, both pale and copper-skinned and very fast thinkers, were already sharing a data pad, pulling up rendering software options, their 4 eyes each moving in separate directions the way Drevathai eyes did when they were processing multiple streams at once. The Selen student 3 rows back made a soft harmonic sound that meant something like "this is manageable" in Selen. Junio had been at the Concordat long enough to know that one. The Keth student near the window was already sketching in the air with one long finger, drafting the geometry of a holographic frame before the professor had even finished handing out the rest of the sheets. Junio read the brief once. He read it the way he read everything, completely, without his expression changing, and then he folded it in half and set it on the corner of his desk. Minji, sitting beside him, had been watching his face since the sheet landed in front of him, because she always watched his face during these moments, because Junio's face was where the real conversation happened if you knew what to look for. "You're not going to render it," she said. It was not a question. "No," he said. "You're going to call your grandfather." He was already reaching for his comm. "Already texting him," he said. Minji sat back in her chair and folded her arms and smiled the small private smile she used when she already knew how something was going to end. Not smug, just settled, the way someone looks when they have seen a particular play before and they know which act they are in. Professor Varel moved to the front of the room with the unhurried forearmed efficiency of a Tethosi academic who had given this same assignment 31 times and was thoroughly pleased with all 31 outcomes. He was a good professor, thorough, fair, genuinely curious about other species in the way that most Concordat academics were curious, from a careful distance, with clean glass between themselves and the subject. "The purpose of this module," Varel said, his voice carrying the soft two-tone resonance of Tethosi speech, "is not simply to reproduce an artifact, it is to engage with what the artifact represents, the evolution of your civilization beyond the period that required it." He looked around the room with quiet satisfaction. Every species here has a martial past that is not ashamed to be hidden. It is a history to be understood, and the assignment of recreation is designed to let you demonstrate how your understanding has matured. Junio was looking at the word *transcended* on his copy of the brief. He read it twice. He set the paper down. He said nothing. The class went on around him, Varel answering questions about format, acceptable materials, digital versus physical reconstruction, and Junio sat with the particular stillness that Minji recognized as the stillness of a decision already made and a plan already forming, belonging to a person who saw absolutely no reason to announce either one. After the session ended, out in the corridor, Minji fell into step beside him. He said *transcended*, she said. "I noticed," Junio said. "What are you going to ask your grandfather for?" "I ask him to decide. He knows the inventory better than I do." Minji stopped walking. "Junio, which inventory?" He kept walking. She caught up. "The shed inventory," she said. "There's only one inventory," he said. She was quiet for a moment, processing, recalibrating, running through the same calculation that Junio had already run the moment he read the word *transcended*, and then she said, very evenly, "Does Professor Varel know what he just asked for?" "He asked for ancient armor, reconstructed, demonstrating cultural insight," Junio said. "I'm going to give him ancient armor, original, demonstrating cultural continuity. That seems like it meets the brief." "That's one way to look at it," she said. "It is," he said. That evening, Junio made a call home. His grandfather answered. On the second ring, always the second ring, never the first, because the first ring was the one where a man decided whether he wanted to be interrupted, and his voice came through the comm the way it always did, low and unhurried, with the background sound of the workshop behind it, something metal moving against something else metal. Harabioji, Junyo said, "Which one do you want to send?" There was a pause. Then his grandfather laughed. It was a long laugh, low in the chest, the kind that comes out of a man who has been asked a question he has been waiting years to hear, not surprised, not excited, just deeply, quietly satisfied, the way a craftsman is satisfied when someone finally asks the right question. "The Josian plate," the old man said. "The full set, the one your great-great-grandmother's family maintained after Guangzhou. That one's 400 years old," Junyo said. 423, his grandfather said. "Give or take, I've been keeping count." "It's been used," Junyo said. "It has," the old man said. "More than once. That's rather the point, isn't it?" Junyo looked at the wall of his dormitory room, plain and institutional and very far from home. "Pack it the way you'd pack it for use," he said, "not for display." A pause. "Of course," his grandfather said, and the satisfaction in his voice had deepened into something Junyo didn't have a word for in any of the 6 languages he spoke at the Concordat, something that only existed in the space between a very old thing and the person responsible for keeping it alive. The call ended. Minji knocked on his door 20 minutes later, takeout in hand, and found him sitting at his desk looking at nothing in particular with the concentrated stillness of a man who has set something in motion and is now simply waiting for the physics to play out. "He's sending it," she said. "He's sending it." She set the food down and sat across from him, and they ate without talking for a while, which was one of the things that made them good at being around each other, the understanding that some silences were not empty. Outside, in the seminar building 2 blocks away, Professor Varel was writing his preparation notes for the module's grading session, satisfied, thorough, 31 years of smooth outcomes behind him and every reason to expect a third a second. He had no idea what was coming. Nobody did. Except Junyo's grandfather, 400 light-years away, already wrapping 400 years of careful maintenance in oiled cloth, humming to himself, completely unsurprised. The assignment was recreate ancient armor. Human said, "Do you want mine polished or bloodstained?" The weeks between the assignment and the submission day moved the way academic weeks always moved at the Concordat Exchange. In a kind of organized hum, everyone pointed at the same deadline, everyone working in their own register of urgency. The Drevathai pair, Sela and Roan, had commissioned an external rendering firm within 48 hours of receiving the brief, a proper studio with 17 specialists and a rendering array so precise it could reproduce the molecular surface texture of any material from any historical period. Their submission was going to be extraordinary, and they knew it, and they were very pleasant about knowing it, which was somehow the most Drevathai thing possible. The Selen students' archive package arrived from its homeworld on the 9th day, a full dataset, curated by the Selen Cultural Ministry, containing complete dimensional specifications for Selen's ceremonial battle shell from the pre-expansion period. The colors were accurate to the micron, the proportions mathematically correct, the cultural context provided in a 40-page companion document. It was beautiful. It was the temperature of a photograph. The Keth student, whose name translated roughly to asterisk precise iteration of the 5th line asterisk in Human Standard, and who everyone just called Keat for convenience, had set up a holographic rendering space in the practice hall and was refining the model daily, adjusting the light diffusion properties of the projection matrix, running spectral analysis on historical records to get the exact color quality of Keth battle carapace from the middle period right. Keat was good. Keat was possibly the most technically skilled student in the entire module. Keat's work made people stop in the hallway to look through the practice hall window, just to stand there for a moment with their mouths quiet. And then there was Junyo's room. A shipping crate from Earth had arrived on day 11. It came on a standard freight run, routed through 3 relay stations, and it was not large, roughly the size of a travel chest, sealed with industrial locks, marked along the top edge in his grandfather's handwriting, asterisk handle flat. Contents irreplaceable asterisk. Minji had helped him carry it from the receiving dock. She said nothing while they carried it, which told Junyo she understood the weight, not the physical weight, which was considerable, but the other kind, the kind that has nothing to do with mass and everything to do with what a thing has been through. They set it in the corner of his room. Junyo looked at it for a moment. Then he went to make tea and did not open it that night. It sat in the corner of his room for 3 days the way things that matter sit, occupying more space than their actual dimensions should account for, pulling the center of the room toward themselves whether you were looking at them or not. Hyori came by on the 4th day. She was in her 3rd year at the exchange, the most senior human representative on campus, and she had a quality that Junyo had always respected. She never performed calm. She either was calm or she was not, and she was honest about which one was true at any given moment. She stood in the doorway of his room, looked at the crate in the corner, and went still. Not the polite stillness of someone being careful. The genuine stillness of someone who has just identified something they were not expecting to find. "What did you ask him to send?" she said. Junyo told her. One word. The specific piece. Hairi crossed the room and sat down on the edge of his bed, and put her hands flat on her knees and looked at the crate for a long moment. "Junyo," she said. "He said I could use it," Junyo said. "Does Professor Varel know what he's getting into?" He asked for ancient armor reconstructed. He didn't say the reconstruction had to be incomplete. Hairi pressed her palms hard against her thighs, a gesture she made when she was deciding something, and then she stood. "I'm going to go very gently mention to Archivist Doss that he may want to attend the submission session," she said. "You don't have to do that." "I really, absolutely, genuinely do," she said. "I'm doing you a favor, and the faculty a much bigger one." She left. Junyo looked at the crate. Then he opened it. He did it alone, which was the right way to do it, the same way his grandfather had always done it, without ceremony, without an audience, because the object didn't need witnesses to be what it was. The locks opened. He lifted the lid. The smell was the first thing, linseed oil and something older underneath it, the specific mineral scent of metal that has been maintained for a very long time by hands that knew what they were doing. And then the contents came into view, packed in layers of oiled cloth, each piece nested against the others the way things nest when someone has packed and unpacked them many times across many years. Junyo didn't take the pieces out. That night, he just looked at them for a while. His hands moved to the edge of the crate and rested there, not touching the armor, just present. There was a dent in the right shoulder plate, old enough that the metal had long since settled around it into a kind of permanence. It was no longer a wound in the material. It was just part of the material's shape now, the way old injuries sometimes become part of a person's shape instead of staying separate from it. There was a repair along the left pauldron, a weld line you could feel more than see, done in a way that told you it had been done in a hurry by someone who needed the armor to last one more day and had instead made it last 423 more years. There was a darkness worked into the collar piece that no amount of careful maintenance had ever fully lifted. Junyo's thumb moved to the shoulder plate. It traced the dent. Not studying it. Just acknowledging it. The way you acknowledge something that was there before you and will be there after you, not with words, because words are for things you are trying to understand, and this was not something he was trying to understand, this was something he already knew in a place that had nothing to do with thinking about it. He stayed like that for a while. Then he closed the crate. He went to bed. Outside in the practice hall, Keats' hologram rotated. Slowly in the dark, perfect and luminous and untouched, light playing across the surfaces of something that had never been used for anything except being looked at. It was very beautiful. It had never kept anyone alive. The difference between those two things was not something the module rubric had a line for. It was not something Professor Varel had ever needed a line for. He would need one now. The assignment was recreate ancient armor. Human said, "Do you want mine polished or bloodstained?" The submissions hall had been designed with the assumption that everything presented in it would be a projection. This was reasonable. For 31 years, everything presented in it had been a projection, and so the space had been built accordingly. Ambient lighting calibrated for optimal holographic display, the air kept at a precise temperature to prevent interference with the projection arrays, long presentation plinths built to a height and depth suited to volumetric display rather than physical objects. It was a beautiful room. It was a room that had been told, architecturally, that the past was something you looked at from a safe distance. The submission session began at 10 in the morning and the hall filled early. Not just the module students and Professor Varel, but a gathering of other faculty who had heard something unusual was on the schedule, and Archivist Doss at the back of the room, seated in a chair someone had quietly arranged for him, very old and very still, all four of his hands folded. Hairi sat in the third row and said nothing and watched. The early presentations were extraordinary. The Drevithai rendering came first. Seela stood at the plinth and activated the display, and the room filled with a perfect recreation of Drevithai Imperial warplate from the consolidation period. Every surface mathematically accurate, the fabrication texture reproduced at the finest level, the color shifting the way the original material would have shifted under Drevithai's binary star daylight. The room made quiet sounds of appreciation. Varel made Notes. It was perfect and everyone knew it, and the presentation took 11 minutes and left no questions unanswered and nothing unresolved, which was exactly what it was designed to do. The Selen students' archive recreation drew the first applause, the ceremonial battle shell rendered in full-dimensional display, the companion document pulled up alongside it, the cultural context delivered in the Selen's careful, formal human standard with the specific word choices of someone who has studied a second language with great seriousness and speaks it more precisely than most people born into it would bother to. It was generous work. Thorough, respectful, correct in every detail. Keats. Holographic models silenced the room. Not applause silence, a different silence, the kind that comes when something is so visually precise that the brain spends a moment just receiving it before any social response becomes possible. The Keth battle carapace from the middle period, rendered at full scale, rotating slowly in the projection space, the surface doing exactly what Keat had spent weeks calibrating it to do. 3 faculty members in the second row leaned forward slightly without realizing they had done it. Varel smiled. This was what 31 years of this assignment looked like at its best. Civilizations meeting their own violent histories from the safe side of academic glass. Understanding without flinching, honoring without glorifying, demonstrating with every beautiful rendered surface that they had arrived somewhere beyond the thing they were depicting. He was proud of this module. He had designed it himself. Minji, seated in the middle of the student rows, leaned sideways toward Sela. "You're going to want to watch the faculty when he presents," she said. "Not the armor, the faculty." Sela's 4 eyes shifted toward her, 2 directing at Minji, 2 staying on the front of the room. "Why?" "Because the armor is just an object," Minji said. "The interesting thing is what happens to the room." Sela did not understand this. Sela filed it under *human. Contextual remark, meaning pending asterisk, and returned its attention to the presentations. There were 4 more submissions between Keat and Junio, a Velhari textile reconstruction, a Moran ceremonial shield in photographic recreation, 2 more holographic displays from Species Junio had never quite gotten the names of straight, all of them good, several exceptional, all of them operating in the same register. Here is what we were, here is how far we have come, here is the comfortable distance between the past and where we stand now. Varel was glowing. He wrote note after note. The module was performing exactly as intended. Junio was last. He carried the case to the front of the room. Himself. No cart, no handling assistance. He just picked it up from where he had set it by the sidewall and walked it to the presentation plinth and set it down. The sound it made when it landed was not loud. But it was specific. It was the sound of weight that had been moved many times before and knew how to land. Not fragile, not tentative, just present. The way things are present when they have been many places and have now arrived at one more. The room registered it without knowing why. Varel looked at his assessment form. Candidate Junio, species, human, assignment, recreate ancient armor from pre-spaceflight era, methodology declared as, he paused, his eyes moved back up the form, physical artifact. He looked at the case on the plinth. "You brought a physical reproduction." "No, sir," Junio said. He opened the case. The latches came back with 2 clean sounds. The lid lifted. The room went quiet in the way rooms go quiet before they understand what they are looking at. Not tense, just receiving, the way eyes receive something before the brain has finished deciding what it is. Old metal caught the light. Not the clean way Keats' hologram caught light, not the precise, calibrated way of a surface designed to be seen, but with depth, with the layered quality that comes from a surface that has been through weather and oil and time and use, a surface that was not trying to look like anything because it simply was what it was and had been for a very long time. Varel stared at it. Dos, at the back of the room, sat forward in his chair. Sela's 4 eyes oriented on the case, all 4 of them, which was not a thing Sela did for holograms. Junio looked at Professor Varel with an expression that was completely calm and completely serious. "Do you want it polished?" he said. A beat. A clean, open beat of silence that the room did not fill. Or bloodstained? Nobody moved. Nobody answered. The room did not understand the question yet. That was the first thing. The assignment was recreate ancient armor. Human said, "Do you want mine polished or bloodstained?" The room did not understand the question at first. That was how it always went with things that mattered. The brain received the information, ran it through its available categories, found no clean match, and spent a moment just holding the thing before the understanding arrived. What was in the case was not a holographic display. What was in the case was not a rendering, not a reproduction, not a digital archive, not a three-dimensional scan printed in modern composite materials and finished to historical specification. What was in the case was Josian-era plate armor. 423 years old. Real. It caught the light the way old metal catches light. Not cleanly, not the way Keats' hologram caught light, but with a kind of depth, a layered quality that came from a surface that had been through weather and use and oil and time, a surface that was not trying to look like anything because it simply was what it was. Varel stared at it. He had 31 years of this module behind him, and not one of those years had prepared him for the specific experience of looking at a thing that was actually old instead of a thing that was accurately representing oldness. The difference between those two things was not something he had ever needed to think about before. He was thinking about it now. This is, he started, the full Josian plate set. Junio said, maintained in my family since approximately 1590. The shoulder repairs on the left pauldron were done in the field during the Imjin War. The collar piece has a stain from the same period that my grandfather's family has been trying to lift for about 200 years with no success. The dent on the right shoulder is older than the repairs, and we don't know the exact origin of that one. You brought the original, Varel said. He said it the way people say things when the statement is technically a repeat of information they already have, but the act of saying it out loud is the first step toward believing it. It has been used, said Doss from the back of the room. Everyone turned. Doss had leaned forward in his chair, both sets of hands unfolded, his attention on the armor with a quality of focus that was different from the faculty attention around him. Sharper, older, the focus of someone who had spent a very long career reading objects the way other people read text. The repair work on the left pauldron, Doss said. That's field maintenance, not workshop maintenance. Someone fixed that piece under pressure, not under ideal conditions. Yes, Junio said. How many times was it used after the Imjin repair? Junio looked at him. We are not completely certain, he said. The family record accounts for 4 confirmed uses after 1593. There are 2 periods in the 19th century where the written record has gaps. My grandfather believes there were at least 2 more uses during those gaps, but we can't verify the exact number. The room had gone very quiet. Not the appreciative quiet of the early presentations. A different kind of quiet, the kind that comes when a room realizes it has been looking at one thing and thinking about another, and the two things are now coming together in a way that changes the shape of both. Seela's 4 eyes had all oriented on the armor. Every single one. Your civilization has had spaceflight for 40 years, Seela said, slowly, working through it out loud the way Drevithai did when a thing didn't fit their existing framework. You are globally cooperative, urbanized, post-conflict by every concordat metric. How do you still have something like this? Why would you keep it? Why wouldn't it be in a museum? Junio looked at Seela. The expression on his face was not unkind. Where would it be safer? He said. The silence after that question was not comfortable. It was not the silence of a room that had no answer. It was the silence of a room full of very intelligent beings all arriving at the same answer at the same moment and not yet knowing what to do with it. 12 species. 12 simultaneous recalibrations. The story did not translate any of them. It didn't need to. Varel's assessment form was still in his hand. He had not written anything on it since Junio opened the case. Doss stood up. He moved to the front of the room with the careful efficiency of someone very old who had learned to move with intention rather than speed, and he stood beside the presentation plinth and looked at the armor for a long time without saying anything, the way archivists look at things, not admiring, not judging, just reading. It still fits, he said finally. Yes, Junio said. You know this because? I put it on this morning, Junio said, to check the condition of the straps. Varel made a sound. It was not a word. It had no word available to be. Doss looked at Junio with an expression that had moved completely outside the range of academic response into something older and more direct. The assignment, Doss said, mostly to himself, the way people talk when they are thinking and the room happens to be listening, was designed to show us the artifacts of civilizations that had moved beyond their violent origins, that had placed their martial history behind glass, in archives, in carefully maintained digital records, evidence of a past that no longer had operational relevance. He looked at the armor. He looked at Junio. You did not bring us an artifact, he said. No, Junio said. You brought us a working document. A beat. The room held it. It seemed like what the assignment was actually asking for, Junio said. Underneath the word asterisk transcended asterisk. Varel set his assessment form down on his desk. He did not pick it up again for the rest of the session. The other students, Sela, Roan, Keat, the Selen student, all of them, were very still in the specific way that people are still when they are revising something significant, when the version of the world they walked into the room with is being quietly and thoroughly replaced by a version that fits the evidence better. Minji watched the faculty. Not the armor. The faculty. She had seen this before, not with armor, but with other moments, other demonstrations, other times the Galaxy looked at a human doing a completely ordinary human thing and realized it had been running on a set of assumptions that the evidence did not support. She watched Varel's face. She watched Doss's face. She watched the room do the work of understanding. It was, she thought, going quite well. Sela spoke again, quietly this time, not processing out loud but genuinely asking, "How long has your family maintained it?" Junio looked at the armor the way you look at something that has been part of your life for so long that being asked to explain it feels slightly strange, like being asked to explain your own name. "Since my great-great-grandmother's family acquired it after the war," he said. "Each generation maintained it and passed the maintenance knowledge to the next. My grandfather taught me the oiling process when I was 8. His grandfather taught him. It goes back that way. That is..." Sela stopped. Started again. "That is not how we treat historical artifacts," Sela said. "No," Junio agreed. "It's how we treat things we might need." The room absorbed this. Nobody said anything for a moment. Nobody had anything available to say. The assignment was recreate ancient armor. Human said, "Do you want mine polished or bloodstained?" 3 days after the submission session, the academic board had convened twice. They had not yet produced a formal grade for Junio's submission. This was unprecedented. The module had been running for 31 years and every submission in every one of those years had been graded within 24 hours. Because every submission in every one of those years had fit neatly inside the rubric that Varel had designed in his first year of teaching, a rubric built on one core assumption, that the thing being submitted would be a representation of something that no longer had operational relevance to the species that made it. Junio's submission had not fit inside the rubric. The rubric had broken cleanly in half when exposed to Junio's submission, the way a tool breaks when you use it for something it was never built for, not gradually, not with warning, just suddenly and completely. Behind the closed door of the board meeting room, several very old and very intelligent beings were having a conversation about a category error that ran 31 years deep, and the conversation was not going smoothly. Minji knew this because Hyrie had been called in for the second meeting as a human cultural context consultant, and Hyrie had come out of it wearing the expression she wore when she had answered one question that led immediately to 12 more questions, all of them larger than the first. "How did it go?" Minji asked. "I explained the concept of inherited operational readiness," Hyrie said. "DOS. Understood it immediately. Varel is still working through it. 2 of the other board members asked me if this kind of thing was specific to Junio's family or if it was a general human pattern." "What did you tell them?" Hyrie looked at her. "I told them it was a general human pattern," she said, "and then I let them sit with that for a moment." "How long of a moment?" "Long enough that one of them asked for a recess," Hyrie said. Junio was eating lunch in the common hall when Minji found him, eating with the focused calm of someone who had already moved on, who had done the thing he came to do and was now simply occupying his afternoon with the practical business of continuing to exist. "DOS wants to talk to you," Minji said. "I know. He sent a message this morning. He wants to know if there are more." Junio took a drink of his tea. "More what?" he said. "More humans with armor." Minji just looked at him. He set his cup down. "Yeah," he said. "There are more." "How many more?" Junio thought about this with the expression of someone doing a genuine estimate rather than a rhetorical one. "I don't know the exact number," he said. "A lot. The specific types vary. The Josian plate set is my grandfather's family's particular line. Other families have other things. Some of it is armor, some of it is other categories. The principle is the same across all of it. The principle being that it still fits. The principle being that we kept it," he said. "And we kept it the way you keep things you might need, not the way you keep things you want to remember. Those are 2 different kinds of keeping." Minji nodded. She sat down across from him and stole a piece of food off his plate the way she had been doing for 2 years without asking, and he had been ignoring for 2 years without commenting. "DOS is going to write a very long report," she said. "I know. Varel is going to redesign the module rubric. Probably. The Concordat Intake Assessment Division is going to have to update their Earth classification. Junio looked at her. They classified us as post-conflict, he said. They measured whether humans had stopped fighting, Minji said, not whether humans had stopped being ready. Those aren't the same thing. No, she said. They really are not. That afternoon, Junio met with DOS in the archivist's office, a room so full of records and objects from a dozen civilizations that the walls were invisible behind the layers of history stacked against them, and the air smelled like paper and old binding and the specific dry quality of things being preserved. DOS was careful in the way very old things that have survived a long time are careful, not fragile, not hesitant, but deliberate, the way someone moves when they understand the weight of what they are handling. The Concordat's intake process for Earth, DOS said, assessed your species as post-conflict, globally cooperative, urbanized, trauma indices within acceptable parameters, spaceflight program consistent with peaceful expansion. The assessment was thorough and it was reasonable and it was wrong in a specific way that I find very interesting. Junho vai ter. It measured whether your civilization had stopped producing conflict, DOS said. It did not measure whether your civilization had stopped maintaining the capacity for it. Those seemed like the same measurement. They're not the same measurement at all. No, Junio said. Is there a word in human standard for what the armor represents? DOS asked. The thing that makes a family maintain a 400-year-old battlesuit across every generation without ever putting it in a museum. Is there a word for that disposition? Junio thought about it for a moment. Not exactly one word, he said. There are a few phrases that come close. Asterisk just in case asterisk is one. Asterisk you never know asterisk is another. Asterisk better to have it and not needed asterisk is the longer version. And the short version. Junio was quiet for a moment. Memory with intent, he said. Maybe. It's not just remembering. It's keeping the remembering useful. DOS looked at him for a long time. Then he began to write. He wrote without speaking and Junio sat across from him and was not impatient. Because there was nothing to be impatient about. The thing was already done, the armor was already what it was, the room had already changed, and the only thing left was the paperwork. Junio shipped the armor home 4 days later. He packed it himself, the same way his grandfather had packed it, oiled cloth, each piece nested against the others, the lid sealed with the industrial locks, and he wrote along the top edge in his own handwriting, alongside his grandfather's older writing, asterisk handle flat, contents irreplaceable asterisk. He sent one message before the crate went to the freight dock. Asterisk they asked if I wanted it polished asterisk. His grandfather replied in 4 minutes. Asterisk what did you tell them asterisk? Junio looked at the crate, at the weight of it, at the 2 sets of handwriting on the lid, at 423 years sitting in a box that was about to travel 400 light years back to the shed where it belonged. He sent 2 words back. Asterisk I asked them back asterisk. The crate shipped on the morning freight run. 3 weeks later, Archivist DOS completed a formal report to the Concordat Xenoanthropology Division, a report that was, by all accounts of those who read it, 3 times longer than it needed to be and twice as alarming as anyone had expected. The report proposed a reclassification of Earth status in the Concordat intake system, removing Earth from the category of post-conflict species and placing it in a new designation that DOS had invented specifically for this situation, a designation that had no clean equivalent in any other Concordat language. Rendered as accurately as possible into human standard, it meant something close to asterisk a civilization that remembers everything on purpose asterisk. The report was approved. The classification was updated. Somewhere in the Concordat's administrative records, in the section titled Species Disposition and Readiness Assessment, under the entry for Earth, the old category was quietly crossed out and the new one written in its place. Without ceremony, without announcement, the way important corrections are often made. And in a shed behind a house 400 light years away, a very old man finished oiling the shoulder plates of a 423-year-old suit of armor and wrapped it back in its cloth and set it in its case and closed the lid. He did it with the specific care of someone putting something away, not discarding it, not archiving it, not placing it behind glass for the benefit of people who want to look at the past from a safe distance. Keeping it. The way things are kept when someone might need them again someday. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not for another 100 years, but someday. And that is a different kind of keeping from a museum, and a different kind of keeping from forgetting. The old man knew the difference. His grandfather had known it, and his grandfather before that, all the way back to the man who first oiled the plates in 1590 and taught his son to do the same, and said the same thing that every generation after him said when they passed the case to the next set of hands. Asterisk just in case asterisk. Asterisk you never know asterisk. Asterisk better to have it asterisk.